Have you ever looked around at your own life and felt like you're watching someone else live it? Maybe you're sitting in your apartment, surrounded by your things, living your routine. But there's this strange sensation that none of it actually belongs to you. Or perhaps you catch yourself going through the motions of your day, relationships, work, hobbies, and you feel more like an actor playing a role than the person actually living the story. This feeling has a name in psychology. It's called depersonalization, and it's your brain's way of creating distance between you and your experiences. But what causes this disconnect? Why does your own life sometimes feel like a place you're just visiting? Today we're going to explore the psychological reasons why you might feel like a stranger in your own life. And more importantly, what this feeling is actually trying to tell you. Number 1. The autopilot has been running too long. Do you find yourself unable to remember entire chunks of your day? Maybe you drove home from work and can't recall a single turn you made. Or you finished eating and barely remember tasting the food. When you live on autopilot for extended periods, your brain stops actively encoding memories because nothing feels significant enough to record. Psychologists call this automaticity. And while it helps us function efficiently, too much of it creates a life that feels more like a blur than a story. Think about the last week. How many moments can you actually remember in detail? If the answer is very few, your brain has essentially been filing your experiences under routine rather than life worth remembering. This isn't laziness or bad memory. It's what happens when survival mode becomes your default setting. You're so focused on just getting through each day that you forget to actually show up for it. Over time, this creates a strange emptiness where you know logically that you're living, but emotionally it doesn't feel like anything is actually happening to you. Number 2. Your life stopped matching your internal image. Have you ever had a moment where you suddenly realize the person you're being doesn't match the person you thought you'd become? Maybe you're in a career that pays the bills, but feels nothing like what you imagined for yourself. Or you're in relationships that are fine, comfortable even, but they don't reflect the connections you once believed you'd have. There's a concept in psychology called self-discrepancy theory, which explains the distress that happens when your actual self and your ideal self are too far apart. When the gap becomes too wide, you start to feel like an imposter in your own existence. It's not that you failed or made wrong choices necessarily. Sometimes life just unfolds differently than we pictured, and we keep moving forward without stopping to reconcile who we've become with who we meant to be. The stranger feeling emerges because you're living a version of your life that your internal sense of self doesn't recognize. You look around and think, this is a perfectly fine life, but it's not mine. That disconnection isn't rejection of what you have. It's grief for the person you thought you'd be living inside of it. Number 3. You've been performing for so long, you forgot the real script. Are you someone who changes slightly depending on who you're with? Maybe you're more reserved around your family, more outgoing with work friends, more intellectual with one group and more casual with another. Social adaptation is normal and healthy to a degree. But when you've spent years carefully calibrating your behavior to fit what others expect, you can lose track of what you actually think, feel, and want. Psychologists call this code switching when it relates to cultural contexts. But there's a broader version that happens when you've become so skilled at meeting external expectations that your authentic self has gone quiet. The stranger feeling comes when you realize you don't know which version is really you, or if any of them are. You might find yourself alone and feel suddenly empty, like you only exist in relation to other people's perceptions. This is exhausting in a way that's hard to name because you're not just tired from the performance. You're tired from the constant wondering about who you'd be if no one was watching. When every interaction requires you to choose a persona, your life starts to feel like a series of auditions rather than actual living. Number 4. Major change happened and you're still catching up. Does it feel like something fundamental shifted, but you're still operating like the old version of your life exists? Maybe you moved to a new city, ended a long relationship, lost someone important, or even achieved something you've been working toward for years. Big transitions create a gap between your external circumstances and your internal adjustment. Psychologists study this as a period of liminality, where you're between identities, no longer who you were, but not yet fully who you're becoming. During this in-between time, everything can feel surreal because your brain is still updating its understanding of reality. You might walk through your new apartment and think, who lives here? Or wake up single after years of partnership and forget for a moment that your life has changed. This isn't denial. It's the natural lag time between what happened and your ability to integrate it into your sense of self. The stranger feeling during transitions is actually a sign that something significant is being processed. Your brain is essentially rebuilding the story of who you are, and that reconstruction takes time. The unfamiliarity isn't permanent. It's the temporary disorientation that comes with becoming someone new. Number 5. You're disconnected from your emotions. Have you noticed that you can describe your life, but struggle to say how you actually feel about it? Maybe someone asks if you're happy, and you list reasons you should be. Nice job. Good people around you, stable routine. But you can't access whether happiness is what you're genuinely experiencing. This is called alexithymia in its clinical form. But many people experience a milder version, where emotions exist but feel muted or inaccessible. When you can't feel your feelings clearly, your life loses its emotional texture. Everything becomes factual rather than felt. You know you went to dinner with friends. You cannot say if you enjoyed it. You're aware you're in a relationship. You're unsure if you're in love or just comfortable. This emotional numbness creates the stranger sensation because feelings are what make experiences feel real and personal. Without them, you're just observing events happening to a body you happen to occupy. Often this disconnection develops as a protection. Maybe feeling things fully was unsafe at some point, so your brain learned to distance you from emotions. Or maybe you've been stressed for so long that your nervous system stayed in shutdown mode. Whatever the cause, when your emotional self goes offline, the person living your life feels like someone else, because in a way, they are. You're functioning without the internal guidance system that makes life feel like yours. Number 6. The pace of your life left you behind. Do you feel like you're constantly rushing, but never actually arriving anywhere? Maybe your days are packed with tasks, obligations, messages to answer, and things to complete. But at the end of it all, you can't point to anything that felt meaningful. Modern life often moves faster than human consciousness was designed to process. Research on cognitive load shows that when we're overstimulated and rushing constantly, we shift into a reactive state where we're responding to demands rather than making intentional choices. Over time, this creates a life that's happening to you rather than one you're actively creating. The stranger feeling emerges because you're not steering. You're just holding on. Imagine you're in a car that's moving too fast to see the scenery clearly. Everything blurs together. You know you're covering distance, but you can't remember the journey or feel connected to where you're going. That's what a life lived at unsustainable speed does to your sense of self. You're technically present for all of it, but you're moving too quickly to actually inhabit any single moment. What makes this particularly disorienting is that you might be productive and successful by external measures, while feeling completely absent from your own experience. The disconnect isn't about doing less necessarily. It's about the pace not allowing you to integrate what's happening into a coherent sense of being alive. Number 7. Coming back home to yourself. Feeling like a stranger in your own life isn't a permanent condition. It's a signal that something about how you're living needs to shift. Sometimes it means slowing down enough to actually feel what's happening. Sometimes it means making choices that align with who you actually are, rather than who you thought you should be. Often it means reconnecting with emotions you've kept at a distance because they felt too big or inconvenient. Start small. Notice one thing each day that feels real to you. Something that creates even a flicker of genuine feeling. It might be the taste of your coffee, a moment of laughter, frustration at something that matters to you. These small reconnections are how you begin to rebuild the bridge between your external life and your internal experience. If this feeling has been with you for a long time or feels overwhelming, talking to a therapist can help you understand what's underneath it and find your way back to a life that feels like yours. You're not broken for feeling this way. You're human, responding to circumstances that pushed you outside yourself. The path back is there. It just starts with the decision to stop watching your life from the outside and step back into it, one present moment at a time.